Welcome, friends. This is Chris here with the End Evil podcast. Evil is the destruction of freedom. My favorite line from the book, The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke. Go ahead and check that out online. It's a free PDF, easy to find. The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke. And that book is really hard to find. It's like costs thousands of dollars. It's out of print. So that's a future project for the End Evil podcast to see if we can figure out a way to get a book or a book like it reprinted to where people can get it. But in the meantime, I've been exploring some great avenues of discussion and conversation with people I've met through the internet, through the freedom community. And I wanted to highlight the work and an awesome friend of mine, Jim Adams, who's here with me today. He is one of my team members on the One Great Work Warriors. What's up, Jim? Thanks for joining me.
Yo, what's up, Chris?
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I've been wanting to chat with you for a while, one-on-one. And I was particularly inspired when you brought up that book that we did. If people haven't checked it out, there's a book called Ishmael. Ishmael? I like to say Ishmael, but
Ishmael.
Exactly how to pronounce it. What is it? Daniel Quinn's the author, right?
Yeah, man.
And then he's got that other book, The Story of B. But we did as a group, we did a book study on that book. But you were the one that brought it to us probably like a year before we finally got around to all reading it, listening it. I listened to it a couple times before our interview, and it brought up a lot of good points. So I thought maybe we could chat a little bit about that. And then, the fact that you're someone who's into gardening, permaculture, growing plants, and just that whole realm is something that's awesome, and it draws my interest, and I know a lot of other people too. So that's some stuff we could talk about. But let's start off with Ishmael and how that inspired you.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I first read it in 2018, and I was part of this kind of local food class, online class, and that's where they first brought it up. So it's definitely part of this permaculture journey that I've been on too. And yeah, it's an easy book to read. Like you can read it in 2 days, easy. It's 6 hours just to listen to. But it really had a great impact on my life when I first read it, and then in years to come. It's like probably the only book I've ever read more than like twice, for sure. And it's also the kind of book that, so many other people say the same thing about it, It does have that impact. And I really wouldn't want to give too much away about it, but it's like stuff that it's common sense, but it's about the mindset of humanity. And the Socratic method, it's a gorilla. You got to use your imagination. The gorilla speaks telepathically to just this regular guy, who one-on-one, and he's asking him questions, and it's just from the perspective of a gorilla, or just an animal in nature. And the difference between our behavior and all other beings, and of course we are different. So I'm not trying to say we are like animals, because our consciousness and our intelligence is on a whole nother level. But are we using our intelligence correctly? That's one of the biggest questions that gets me. And this is a kind of a quote by Bill Mollison, who started permaculture. It's like, why is it that we, with beings with all this intelligence and access to resources, keep falling into holes of our own making? I mean, he doesn't really answer it, and permaculture focuses on so many of the external solutions. But I think the answer to that, like why do we keep falling into holes of our own making, is the mindset, for sure. It's the inner work that needs to be healed. And as far as permaculture is concerned, I've been doing some research over the winter, even trying to like put together some kind of class on it. And so I've been really digging into what the true intention of permaculture was from the founders and how it's been misunderstood and taken to all different levels of like, what people think it is. And so that's been cool to research. I forgot where I was going with that.
Yeah, that's really
But
interesting. It was kind of striking me while you were talking too that I think one thing I always liked about the opportunities in my life when I've had opportunities to do my version of gardening. I mean, I didn't quite get to the level of permaculture. I'm sure some aspects I've brought into what I was doing, but the point is that it's a spiritual practice. Um, going out in the garden, getting your hands on the dirt, and like, okay, when you plant something, there's like this patience. You got to wait, and then there's this kind of balance of care where if you give too much water and or too much sun or not enough sun or not enough water, um, you'll destroy the plants. And then there's sort of this balance between being a caretaker and then kind of letting things be, right? And then the modern version of farming has become this super industrialized money making machine. Throw a bunch of chemicals, kill everything that doesn't conform to the way we want it to grow. And then we look
mhm,
in the past at different times in history, and we could see that people survived for a really long time without poisoning everything and destroying everything that, you know, without having so much heavy handed kind of almost like there's a parallel between the statism and the authoritarianism and like how we treat life and how we even treat ourselves on the inside. So there's a lot of parallels
yeah.
there to how we can be better, I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent there, but you were
No, it makes
mentioning,
sense.
did you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, well, when it comes to, Ishmael again, like a lot of the book gets into is agriculture. And that's a mindset that we all have, that we all grew up just not even thinking about. That's just where your food comes from, not thinking about the history of it and all that. People don't think about it. And that's where permaculture comes in also, because that's what I first started to learn about, like the destructiveness of agriculture throughout, the millennia. And so, yeah,
Oh, the other aspect too, like in terms of what I was saying, like the reflection of our soul, like it's like some of the hardest working people in different times and places in the world that are out there doing that work to provide the food for the community, right? And often the least thanked, or the books aren't about the people that grew the food. The books are about the rulers that went and um,
yeah,
destroyed
it,
people, right? But who's been feeding people all the time are the farmers,
right.
actually sustaining life, right?
Agriculture like led to governments and slavery and all that. I mean, ultimately, it began with, the mind. But um, the other thing that I sometimes I just lose my train of thought. Sorry, but
Me too. I get it.
indigenous with indigenous wisdom, and Ishmael gets into that as well, and permaculture too. That's really what permaculture is. It's like it's taking indigenous knowledge and just like ancient, history, like ways of growing, like that were always used, and then got like forgotten about because of this like technological this technological mindset that we're in, instead of this ecological mindset that, we always were in, but then slowly have been indoctrinated out of. And, when people say that permaculture is like the solution to, to freedom and stuff like that, that seems to be a big kind of part of, even me in the beginning, I thought that, before realizing like it's not the external solutions that's going to save us. But, if you think about the indigenous people who are still here, or just the American Indians who are here, like they have their reservations. Okay, so they were given their land to uh, be free on their own. But have they ever really been able to, like, are they safe from the outside? Like, as long as the outside mentality is still under this, agricultural and statist mindset, they're never going to be safe just because, like, that's been proven. So when people go out and say, "Oh, we're going to make this community that's self-sufficient and all that," they're not really going to be safe from like an army coming and saying, "Fuck you, this is ours now," stuff like that. So I wanted to point that out because um, permaculture gets misunderstood, and a lot of people think it's about that, but it's really, I've been learning, the original intention was to create a new consciousness in the entire culture. It wasn't just about, um, it became misunderstood as like a cool way, like of organic hippie farming, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's way more to it. But of course they do focus more on the external solutions, when it comes to growing food and stuff like that.
But at least, like you've brought up before the hermetic principles, right? And the fact that there's this cyclical nature to everything, right? Whether we're talking about vibrations or correspondence or the reflexive nature of the universe, that like people that spend time closer to nature and observe nature, you see that there's these cycles, and we go through these cycles, right? And the modern world, the takers, like Ishmael put them, and we're talking about, industrial agriculture, is trying to enforce the way we want it done. And like I said, killing whatever's in the way. If the time isn't right, we'll change our time to suit, we'll save some daylight for next year, right? Daylight savings time.
Yeah.
How do you save daylight? It's a silly concept, but we create all these structures so that it's really money based. It's really selfish based. And like, to me, like the paradox or the conundrum in all that is that here we are talking about freedom, individual freedom. But this huge aspect of individual freedom is recognizing that we're connected to everyone else around us. And it's not just me, I have to be accountable for me and figure out how to support myself. But however I do that affects other people. It affects nature. It affects the ground. And if we just do stuff without thinking about how it's connected to the other things around it, we pretty much cut ourselves off from like that source, love, divine energy, and yeah, like you do a great job of bringing up a lot of these topics. People, you guys might want to check out Jim's YouTube channel, which is Truth in Your Heart. And I could show a quick little screen share here of, this is Jim's, where he does a lot of his work online is Instagram. And you can see he's just got lots and lots of posts that he puts on there. A lot of times he, might be walking through his garden and talking. Look, here's one when he's got his guitar out. And just talking about like from your heart, how you feel about some of these things. So yeah, I'd encourage people to check out Earth School Farm, his Instagram page, because that's a great place to follow up on your work, Jim. But like you didn't you also do some what do you call it? Whoops. Where you were having people out to the farm, because you're doing this stuff. He's doing this stuff for real in the real world. He's gardening, growing things, working on permaculture, and you did some things where you've invited people to come eat, like farm to table type situation too, right?
Yeah, I just started doing that last year,
Mm-hmm.
as just as a business just as a way to connect people with local food and just make a little bit of cash, But
Yeah.
um, it's a funny thing because since I started in this world, like in 2017, like that Earth School Farm Instagram page originally was called Lawn Island Farms, LAWN Island, because I live on Long Island, and I started out um, turning people's front yards into farms, and that got controversial and a lot of attention and neighbors freaking out. And that's where it really began to understand it's the consciousness of, especially a Long Island. It's such a stressed out, fast paced, you know, consciousness here. But of course, it's all over. But that's where it really sunk in. I was like, wow, the people just aren't, because people would say this isn't going to work. And I was like, what, like, that's the permaculture saying too. What do you mean it's not going to work? Like, do trees grow? Does food grow? But it's not about that. It's because the people just aren't ready for it. So I kept trying to like want to connect people to local food. So growing food in front yards. So put like in your face, And then that kind of backfired, and but it got me enough like media attention where um I got asked to be on this land, which is part of a 200-acre property, which is owned by the Sisters of St. Joseph. But the there's a bunch of farms on there. But they allowed me to start up my permaculture area, which is about a half an acre at this point. And but like I was gonna say, throughout this time, I'm finding I've done like these farm to table stuff outside, like in like pop-up restaurants. And it's kind of like people don't really want it, The farmers markets, it's like there's only like out of like millions of people who live here, it's not like a popular thing. Like people, you find the consciousness is they don't really care about being connected to where their food comes from. But that's a big problem, when shit hits the fan, or knowing that the last thing that the government wants is for us to be able to be self-sufficient and take care of ourselves. The people, they don't want to, they want to be taken care of. So it doesn't appeal to them yet. So at this point, I've just been doing the permaculture thing, and it's like 5 years, and I'm not really like a gardener. Like I'm not like one of those people who geek out on it or anything like that. Like I'm not like into it like people get and know the names of and all this stuff. I was more into it like as a way, oh, like this can be a solution to, making the world a better place, and finding out people aren't ready for it. But anyway, so I've been learning as I go along, and like you said, it's like I love it. Like I go out there and I just on the land, and I learn so much about myself as well, and see things grow, and working with nature and not against nature, which I'm surrounded by regular conventional farmers who are all plowing and tilling. So I'm showing the difference. My difference is it's going to take time, but it's more permanent. Like it will be here when I'm gone if they allow it to be. But, you know, when it comes to that land, they wanted it, they put out these ethics for it to be, more in the alignment with permaculture. But again, the consciousness, it's like, oh, well, we want to grow food for the community. So they went straight to agricultural, tearing the land apart. But meanwhile, they have it like written in their ethics, like we want to be in harmony with all beings on the planet, but then shooting bottle
Right
rockets
up
at
until it
geese and
costs too
shit.
much money, right?
Yeah,
Or the
well,
government says.
there was nothing in there that said about growing food even. That came a little bit later, and then so I mean it's only like 30 acres of the land is in food production, but if it was in alignment with the ethics, it would all be permaculture. But they're all great. They have, great people, their families and everything. I'm just doing my thing. But
But you are okay, you're in Long Island. So I spent some time in New Jersey, upper New Jersey and lower New York State, and that is a heavily populated area. Does it spread out a little bit where you're at in Long Island and there's a little more space, or is it pretty close to have heavy population zone?
no, it's very populated.
It's pretty
Like
dense,
I know
right?
New Jersey can get pretty rural. The most you're gonna get
In the
rural is
South, it gets a little more
out,
country. Yeah.
yeah, but out east where the Hamptons are, and I don't know if you know like the Forks, the the, the North and South Fork there, and that's always been agricultural. But yeah, that's the most rural, and but no, the city keeps coming out this way
Yeah.
from New York
Well, the
City
reason I
out
brought
east.
that up, last week on the show, I had Derek and Leslie, and afterward, we were chatting for a little bit. And Derek was asking me about California and some of the different cities and, just kind of the level of consciousness in terms of people that are more on the statist side versus people that are a little bit more on the freedom side. And I really like this topic because talking about self responsibility, you're talking about growing food and being responsible for your own food, finding ways to be more self responsible. Um, Colby and I did that discussion recently on Freedom Self Starter. And so that really plays into one thing I appreciate about you too. Like you're not a super wealthy man, but you're finding ways to support yourself to where you're not like constantly working for the man, so to speak. You're doing some Uber Eats, and then working some time on your farm when you can, and kind of making your own schedule and doing the pool work. And I really appreciate that, being kind of a Renaissance man, a man of many talents. And I think that applies to women too, of course. But we people that care about freedom, it sort of forces us to start looking for other avenues of income and ways to self support ourselves. If we do want to separate from the state, then that means we have to figure out, okay, where are we going to get our food? How are we going to become more self responsible? And it just occurs to me that the deeper you get into a city, I kind of notice there's less of that. And the more you kind of get out in a country, you find that people are kind of used to having to do things for themselves more. So, have you noticed that at all? Does that make sense what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I think morality goes down as population increases.
Yeah, that was something that came up in the Ishmael book as well, too, right? The more that people aren't directly
That rhythm.
involved in their own food growing process and it becomes industrialized, it's like a type of tyranny.
Yeah, it's messing with that rhythm, right?
Oh, rhythm. That's the word I was trying to think of earlier. I was
Yeah.
hermetic principles. Yeah, rhythm. Right. We got the rhythms of the sun, the rhythms of the moon, the rhythms of the wind, rhythms of the water. And, like we could either be more in tune with that or shut it all out and try to control it all to the maximum degree. Right.
Yeah, that's a controversial one. I'm afraid to go near it, but
Oh, the population
population.
thing. Well, that's kind of why I brought it up, honestly, is because like
Yeah.
my take on it, my perspective, like from traveling around California, is I've lived in more densely populated areas. I grew up in San Jose, East San Jose
Mm,
is a very populated area, and I've moved to areas that are more rural and more country, and I've noticed that there is a lot of space out there, but these areas where everybody's compacted in really tight, assholes and elbows, you got more problems with crime, and you have less personal responsibility, and therefore because of that, I think that's why there's that difference in morality too, because of self-responsibility, right?
yeah, and the belief systems changes. It's easier to control the minds. It yeah, I mean, when it comes to overpopulation, most people automatically go to like, the conspiracy stuff, like, with the pandemic and Agenda 2030 and climate change and all that stuff and eugenics. But, that's, they think about it as like as a number of like how like 8.5 billion in relationship to the size of the planet and all that. But like I like to like ask people to think about it as an action, as a verb that we carry out. We if we overpopulate an area, which we do, right? Like where I live, it's totally overpopulated, and that's why the like ecosystem, the water's polluted. That's why the air is polluted. That's all that kind of stuff. Like pollution is definitely a byproduct of overpopulation, and it's not healthy. And I do think that living in this way too, which isn't natural, but sustains what you're saying, sustains this um, immoral way of living. So I wouldn't say like there's too many people on the planet like that in that way of overpopulation. It's just that we're living too fucking close together, like which is out of balance, it's out of harmony, it's out of cooperation, and it's out of rhythm with nature. So that was the part with the rhythm. I think the book was talking about where Daniel Quinn doesn't, speak about, the Hermetic principles, but I think he really was like he would call it the law of limited competition or the law of life. And I saw it as the law of rhythm, like that the action of overpopulating is detrimental to, or it's even controlling the mindset, like, you know,
Yeah,
but
you
it
know,
gets scary because, yeah, I was saying like overpopulation is like, whoa, people freak out. So, but
it's scary because then it you know kind of implies like, oh, what's the solution to that? Like,
yeah,
if you really if people really believed across the board or were aware of the truth, let's say it was the truth that we're all overpopulated, the world's overpopulated, then it would start sounding more and more like a sensible thing to let more people die. Or a war might be like, oh, good, we need to get rid of some people. And I think that's the part of it that gives us both like this kind of like, whoa, hold the brakes, we don't want to
yeah,
go down that path. Because, well, anyone that's looked into, like you said, Agenda 2030, the New World Order, these Rockefeller, Rothschild kind of plans that they even write down in these books. Who's the Eat Bugs guy, right? That part of their plan
oh,
is to encourage this whole like, oh, sustainable development. We got to cut down the carbon credits. It's all you consumers that are the problem. And so, from that point of view, they can kind of convince people that to go along with their plans, which their plans are, who knows, to cull a percentage of the population, to keep a percentage of the population sick and mentally damaged so that they're easier to control, you know? And I think that's the concerning aspect of it. But I think what you're
right,
talking about is more like being responsible. Like, should we just keep
right.
having kids irresponsibly, or should we like think about what's going on and be like, hey, let's think about what we do before we do it?
Yeah. I mean, it's about using our intelligence correctly, right? Like ecologically instead of economically. I don't know all the answers. I hear totally what you're saying. It does. That's why it gets controversial because then people think,
Yeah.
what's the solution? The one thing I was thinking about though is like those scumbags or whatever. Why would they want to depopulate us anyway? Because don't they thrive off of us, like being like so many of us though? Like so it's not like that getting rid of us is going to be a solution for them. Like they got to know that, and they need us to be behaving in this way for them to do what they do. I don't. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but it's
No,
just
it's a
things that
good
cross my
question.
mind. I
And,
haven't.
it makes me want to say something I've thinking about is just probably like in the last year or two, it sort of sunk into me on another level that, oh, we are kind of like a farm, you know? And so if you can imagine the way
Exactly. Yeah.
right now, like pig farmers are farming pigs, it's like they're
Yeah.
specializing in just pigs, right? And it's all about the money. And well, you
They don't want
consider
less pigs.
they at times they're if they have to kill hundreds of pigs, if it's best for business, that's what they're going to do, right? Like if there's a little sickness going around and that might get the other pig sick, or they want to open up a new section of the farm and all these old pigs are in the way, they won't think twice to kill them. They're just like a product, right? And so I
Hmm.
think there's constantly this kind of culling going on of the population, or shifting from one place to another, or just, I think at the level of these dark sorcerers, uh, if you control all the money in the world, like money is not power anymore. Being able to control people and large areas of people is power, and that's a whole nother like kind of dark subject. But I do think that we are being managed kind of like a farm, just like we manage animals and just like we manage plants. And things are all kind of reflexive and corresponding in that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. That's what made me think, why would they want to like reduce us to like under a billion or just to start over? But um
I'm curious, kind of like, yeah, I know you've had conversations with people, but on your personal journey, like, what kind of started to change your mind to where I think where people get stuck, a lot of people, like, they don't even want to recognize or see that our world is that managed. And a lot of people I talk to are like, no, there's government, there's corporations, there's different groups that are vying for power, but there's no overarching conspiracy. That's all just comic book movie stuff. Like, how does that affect you? And is there a point in your life where you kind of change your point of view on that? The great conspiracy, we'll call it.
like when I started to like
Like, I mean,
understand like
I know you went through Mark Passio's work, and then before you and I first talked, and you joined the One Great Work Warriors, you got more passionate, inspired that there's a major problem, right? It's not just a small
yeah,
thing, right? And so somewhere along that path, you must have kind of realized that this is a bigger deal than what a lot of people think it is, right? This whole slavery thing.
yeah, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it was pretty much over the course of a decade from about, well, even longer, since about 2007, 6, like when the Twin Towers were hit, I was all about, yeah, like, go to war and all that. And I had a couple people I knew who were saying that it was an inside job, and I thought they were total assholes and all that. And it was about like 2005, 2006 where I started to like, you know, hear stuff and ask questions and all that. And like 2012, I started to like just have this ask questions like, who am I? What am I doing here? Stuff like that. And spoke to a life coach, and some of that information started coming in. And permaculture for sure. When I first started learning about that, people in that world are I don't want to say conspiracy minded, but understand, like talk about these things. And like when I first took the permaculture class, that was right around the time of Occupy Wall Street at the same time. So that was all like a big buzz. And then I started saying shit and becoming weirder and weirder and like alienating myself a bit from my friends and gradually like leading to my divorce, probably even, uh, among other things. But really, it wasn't until COVID. COVID was the big one, right? But by the time COVID hit, I was like, oh, I know this is something's not right here, and how frustrating it is to see everyone else be falling for it and getting vaccines and oh man. And that like yeah, it was 2021 when I came across Mark Passio's work and that, you know, I I myself like just as brainwashed as everyone else when it came to morality and how simple it is
Hmm.
to know like what the difference between right and wrong and like that we've the moral relativism. I think these were things like questions I asked when I was a kid to my parents, especially when it came around religion and stuff. But then you gotta let it, I had to let it go, and like, because they just like, that's just the way it is. My parents would say that, or teachers would say that. And so I let it go. And then I think that's why part of the reason I became an alcoholic, like, because I was just like, just drink it away, just join society.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Just kind
did
of pull
that
the
for 20,
blanket over your head, right? I get that, man.
yeah. So I did that for 23 years, where I drank beer every day for 23 years. And 2017, when I started this farming, the Long Island farms and all that, and I just, but whatever, I was just ready. It was time. And, I would get gout all the time, which is, I don't know, it's kind of weird. Like a lot of
Painful,
people,
right?
yeah, I got it like 40 times before I was like,
Wow.
okay, it's from drinking beer, it's from the alcohol. So that pain definitely helped contribute to me quitting. So it's been like 7 years, and but that was a big factor that got me out of my brain. I was in the fog with just drinking that everything away, like not having to deal with reality. And so then I stopped drinking and thinking more clearly, and then you could look at reality and not hide from it. And then it's like talking about the truth, and then you realize, oh man, people hate the truth. They hate it so much, man. They hate it so much. And
Mm.
it's like that's the only thing we got going for us though, right? Because
Yeah,
even
man.
though when people are talking shit, like at least we know we're in truth, and we're not like lying or making shit up. Like we're not stuck in beliefs. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I don't know who I was just talking with about this. So many times in conversations with people, I'm trying to bring it back around to what I see as the most important topics. And maybe that fact that I'm trying to bring it back around to something important there that creates resistance in people I'm talking to because they maybe sense this agenda, but a lot of times I'll say something and then everybody's eyes just kind of glaze over and there's like this weird silence and then like someone changes the subject and I'm just like,
Yeah.
what happened there? I was trying to, and I think what it is like when you really get at the hardcore truth and you start talking about morality and objective morality, even bigger, like it's a scary thing because like we were talking about, it's about accountability, about all your choices mattering. And we live in a world that is trying to convince you that things don't really matter and that you can just kind of bathe in this material world and do your job and just follow the rules of the land, man's laws, and that's what we're going to call good. So like what in your interpretation now, how do you see good and evil and where we're supposed to be since everything's so mixed up with all this like government and authority and stuff and religion? How do you fit into that in the modern world, with what we've learned? That's a big question, I know, but just
How
reflect a
do
little
I
bit.
fit in?
Yeah, like I mean,
Uh,
I struggle with it. Like I know you got pulled over by the police like
oh
three or
yeah,
four times, and there's certain levels of things that I'm not trying to necessarily fight on a day-to-day
I'm
basis, but how do we fit
yeah,
into this
man.
corrupt society, I guess, with more morals,
Um, No, I'm still in it. I think I'm just in the very beginning part of just talking about it,
Hmm.
bringing it up and trying to see where people are at with it and being very frustrated and the consciousness, understanding the consciousness more. Yeah, I mean, I'm doing this permaculture stuff, but I'm not self-sufficient. I'm not um I'm still paying taxes and trying to figure out how not to. I don't like pay a lot, but trying to get people to understand where their money is contributing to and having them tell me that that doesn't matter, that they don't care. Um, yeah, I don't see tickets, man. I keep getting tickets. I keep getting more and more tickets since I started to talk about this stuff though. So I I I get them all the time. I have an arraignment date. Is that
Oh
on like
no.
in July for like four tickets, seatbelt tickets and uninspected. And then I got a parking ticket because I was doing the Uber Eats and I like parked in like a no parking zone just to get in and out real quick. But those guys are just like predators. They're just waiting like they can have you write you up a ticket in but 1 minute before you get in and out. And that's $100.
So
Like, what the
sinister.
fuck, dude? And I didn't do anything like to harm anyone. That's always the big thing. Like all these things that I've gotten tickets for, not wearing a seatbelt, on inspection, which I got done, but I was struggling with like mechanics at the time to figure out what was the problem. But all these things, like, no, I'm not causing any harm, but yet they're harming me, but they're allowed to do it, and everyone will defend them doing that. But and then I sound like I'm a baby, right? But I don't know what to do because the I mean I do like I haven't had the money like they're stealing money from me and my family, right? Like I could give it to them, but it's like I guess I'm gonna have to because I got those red light camera tickets. There's one for a stop sign that they they started doing in this small village. They have stop sign like how many hundreds of thousands of times maybe I've gone through stop signs in my life and never harmed anyone.
Right.
And now they're gonna they have them on school buses now. That's $250 if
Dude,
and
when COVID the big scam first started, I was on a family trip and we were going Southern California and we stopped near one of those really famous beaches. It's like a tourist area. And this was only like a couple weeks after they'd slammed it down on everybody and people were starting to they weren't even it was like before the masks even started. It wasn't even masks out there yet. It was just
right.
like people staying inside and no one was outside. And we had decided to go on this trip, this vacation anyway, and half of it went pretty smooth and then more and more like things started shutting down on us and we couldn't even get into bathrooms and basic stuff like that. But there was one day where I think it was near is it Ventura Beach, one of those really famous beaches, and super populated area where they like all the shops would be open and there'd be people everywhere, but it was totally vacated because of the scam. And so like we were just looking for a bathroom or something and I parked like there was no car for miles in either direction. And
Yeah.
I left the car there just for a little bit. We walked up and down the street looking for a bathroom and I come back and there's a ticket on my window. And it's just like, dude, look at the situation here. I get it, right? If it was super, I mean, it's wrong anyway, but it's one thing if it had been super populated and there were cars parked up and down the street, why
Yeah.
they got to enforce this rule, to keep the parking spots. But there was no one for miles. You know what I mean? And supposedly we're in this serious disease, you know, uh, thing, and this freaking cop gives me a ticket. It's like has no idea of common sense. And then like downtown, for instance, in my own town, where they're going to give you a ticket or make you pay to park somewhere that the whole downtown was built from taxpayer money. Like, why would you pay to park in your own town that you paid for your whole life through your working? It's so absurd. And it's like, you mentioned something in the beginning of this podcast about, like, we can't get perspective on these things. People can't see it because we've been in it our whole life. But if, like, we were an alien coming from another planet, or like Ishmael, a gorilla, that's where that perspective really helps out. Is like, we got to find a
Yeah.
way to look at this from a fresh perspective to see how ridiculous it is and how stupid. Would you pay someone to be in your own house, hitting you with a whip every time you looked in the wrong direction, or you didn't close the door right? You want someone to stab you with a little poker to remind you that, oh, close the door, like, this is the world we're creating, where we're stabbing ourselves in so many ways with our own hard-earned money, having people out there following us around and giving us a hard time for it and stealing our energy. It's just preposterous.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's me going off on a rant, not asking you a good question, but
No,
there's
it's
no,
all
like you said, there's no simple solutions, right?
no. I mean, like we always say, well, that's what we're doing right now. We're just talking about it. But like Thomas Paine, right? Like he wrote a book about it. It's like getting people to like think. Um, I want to promote it more. Larkin Rose's movie,
Yeah, the
Jones
Jones
Plantation, because
Plantation.
yeah, it's exactly what you're just saying. It's like the mindset, like we're defending our own slavery, like eh, you got to point out to people that we are living in a condition of slavery, but they don't see it. I mean, that's a goal, right? To get people just to see that slavery, that it is the condition we're living in, to get people to admit that, right? That book, End Evil, is another great one that you brought up
Yeah,
in the
The End of
beginning.
All Evil
I
by
mean,
Jeremy Locke.
so simple, right? It's so simple, but
Yeah, and I think,
getting
go ahead.
no, that's all. Just getting people to like to that understanding and like again, like both things we were talking about, we didn't cause harm to anyone, but they're harming us, like doing their job. That's their job, right? That guy didn't have to give you a ticket, but that's the business. That's his job. Like it's a business. It's all a business.
Which is, like we talked about in compromise, compromised principles. We as a nation, as a people, are so used to compromising our principles left and right. Like you said, there's a lot of things that you and I would like to be more of an anarchist, but in the balance of what we're trying to do here, what becomes more important is having the ability to speak out. This is like the internet's our megaphone that hasn't existed through most of history. Most of
Yeah.
history, people just had to, like, yell real loud or write things with a quill and pen and try to spread them around, or print things and spread those things around. But like, I think it's probably hard for you to see how evolved you are. It's one thing to do some self work and recognize the problems in the world, and then see, like, oh, I'm not even treating my own body right, and get yourself right there and doing that self work, and then doing that self work to do hard research and look at things that are hard to look at, and then to take that whole other step of, now I'm going to talk about it publicly. I'm going to put my name out there. I'm going to put my face out there publicly, and I'm just going to speak about it clearly right in front of people as often as I can and on a regular schedule. And the fact that you've taken all those steps, to me, is extremely evolved. And there's very, very few individuals I see out there that have taken those steps. And I think those are the most important steps for people to follow. Not necessarily to be completely 100% farming your own food. That's great, but not the most important thing. Wouldn't you agree? Like, the very most important things that we got to do are, like, our mindset, working on ourselves, getting right with
Hmm.
ourselves, and then learning how to speak clearly to others so we can make some sense of things.
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks. I'd say the same right thing right back at you, and you've been a great help, and the rest of the guys in our group, like have inspired me to do more, and I've learned a bunch, even as far as creating the content, and it was all from you guys too, like just simple things. But yeah, the speaking out is, yeah, I was always a very introverted person. I still am, and so in the beginning that was really tough, and I still am, but I've gotten better at that stuff. you know Back in the day though, right, like people who did this stuff got killed. um so I don't know, like right now there's a point where there's not enough of us, so we're not really making any kind of impact, maybe, but for them to, like, ex like the Inquisition and all that kind of stuff, like people would get killed for speaking like this. But um and like I've been trying to, on the land that I'm on, like, and work with homeschool children, and trying to figure out how to get them to understand, because their minds aren't in the school system, and they haven't been programmed and indoctrinated. They're not even like on the cell phones as much. But I'm finding that I, that's going to be very difficult because their parents are indoctrinated and programmed. So, I just still don't know how, like, to reach people. The Socratic method is obviously a great way, but
Yeah, and you do come across very like humble, and even in our videos with the One Great Warriors, I like the way you present yourself because you're kind of like saying, "Hey, here's something I've been thinking about, and this is what doesn't make sense to me." But you're not coming out and like just straight up attacking people. And I know you're a father too, and we share that. My kids went through indoctrination school, and it's been very difficult to talk to them about some of the things that I think are most important. And I know you deal with that, with your own kids and your ex who doesn't necessarily agree with some of the viewpoints we're sharing in this video.
yeah.
So yeah, dealing with children and relating to other people is another huge aspect that I was just hoping to get into. So I'm glad you brought up the kids. Maybe you
Hmm.
can talk a little bit more about being a father and how do we relate this stuff to the younger generations.
Yeah, no, and we've spoken about this before. And again, like just a little bit earlier, like I'm still in it. My kids are in school. They're in 11th grade, and I didn't really start understanding this stuff until, like, they were just beginning kindergarten. I started talking to their mother about homeschooling. She didn't want anything to do with it, and then the pressure of all the rest of the people in my life. I don't know, like, I wasn't ready for it. Again, I was still that alcoholic, always working like crazy too. But whatever, like, there should be no excuses, but that's the way it is. So I know a lot of people may frown upon me for that, for having kids being in the school system, but they were uh they already were programmed before I even figured it out, you know. But I
We got to start from where we're at, right? I
I don't
mean, we're
know.
just
I
people.
I speak to them. I speak to them all the time, and again, they hate the truth too. You know, they But I do think when they get older, it's gonna sink in for sure. They're gonna understand what I was saying.
You're
Um,
planting seeds like a true farmer, right?
definitely,
Or a
definitely
gardener.
planting. Yeah, planting the seeds,
Soul gardening.
and I could see it. I do see the difference huge because I do work with the homeschool kids, and I see the difference, with. So I mean, yeah, I
The
work with.
homeschool kids seem different to you than the kids that are not
Yeah,
homeschooled.
that
What are some of
yeah,
the things you
because
see there?
they're not on the phones.
Hmm.
Like the parents, like, and that's not to say all homeschool parents are like that, but the ones that I am like working with, um, yeah, they just um they're just not programmed the way that the rest of the school kids are. They play with each other a lot more, and they're using their imagination a lot more. I'm definitely seeing that they're using their imagination. It's like stuff I remember when I was a kid that, again, like, I fucked up, but my kids got cell phones when they were 10, and then I saw the difference. Like, they got taken away, and that's the way it is, man. I let it happen, and so that's
How about
being honest. I'm not the greatest father, but
well, I mean, that's the shadow work. Like we look at the aspects of ourselves that we can improve, but um, then we move forward and we're like, well, what can we do to build on this, right? Um, Something I've been thinking, talking about recently. I did a little video just this week on interconnectedness, and I've noticed that a lot of times when I'm in nature, like just going for a walk, or like working in the garden, it's a time where inspiration, mental like thoughts kind of flow freely. And I've even wondered sometimes, like if maybe somehow I'm talking to the trees or the souls of the forest or something, or when I'm quiet, I can hear the vibes of what they're trying to get at. I mean, do you feel like getting your kids outdoors has helped, or is that something you try to do? Or your time outdoors, does that bring you inspiration?
to me, definitely, yeah. I always would try to take them out hiking, and that they resisted. Like, I don't know what it is, man, but they when they were younger, I would always take them, but then when I gave them like a choice, they didn't want to go. But then I bring them. My daughter likes going. We go to the beach at sunset. She likes doing that. My son hates it. Like, he hates the beach. To have the permaculture area, which is like amazing. It's like a half acre. I don't have my own yard, but I have that, and it's like a little park I created, and they don't really like going there. I gotta drag them there too, and
Mm-hmm.
it's upsetting.
But once
They're,
they're
they're
there, do
mo-
they open up a little bit
a
sometimes?
little bit, but they don't really want to stay.
Yeah.
They're not into that, but I don't know. Maybe
I
they'll
did
come
notice with
around on
my
that.
girls, especially when they were younger, I would be like, let's go to the beach or let's go for a hike. And they're always like, nah, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But then once we
yeah,
get out there, all of a sudden they'd be running around with sticks and they'd start having a good time. But I mean, I know yours
it's
are
true.
teenagers now, so
Yeah, that's
that
definitely,
changes.
you know, I did have that happen. Yeah, but yeah, the teenagers, they're twins too, boy and a girl. Unfortunately, they're doing that brother and sister thing, but the with
Button heads a little bit.
yeah, but it's to be expected. And it's just me. Like, I'm a single dad, so their mom took off. Like, she's around on the weekends, but I don't know. I'm just doing the best I can. It's like,
Hey, that's all we can do. And, I think that says a lot to people that might be listening right now, that we're just people like you, and we're trying to put this stuff out there. We're trying to make a difference. Does it give you, I know me, like, it gives me a sense of joy. I'm passionate about doing this kind of work. And when I make a new video or I'm part of a new Great Work Warriors meeting, I feel good about it. I feel like I'm trying to do something right in this world with so much wrongs. And so, like I really appreciate what you're doing. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah, same to you. Yeah, if anything, I've always, and people do this, right? They're like trying to find out like what their purpose is. And for a while, I thought it was, permaculture had something to do with it. And yeah, probably like I get a lot out of that. But really, man, it wasn't until the, natural law stuff and you talking about ending evil. What greater fucking purpose is that, right? You know, talk about that, like ending evil, like what greater purpose, right? Seriously, I mean, how probably like one of the most difficult challenges you could take on, but seriously, like ever since I started to think of that as a purpose, like that's felt the most right. Like I said, permaculture was like didn't totally feel like it, but this really feels like it, like, like because I do believe like, we do this isn't our only life. So I would think, if we come in and we came in for a reason, and if you had to come kind of think of like the best reason to come in, it would be to be doing this, to be like working on ending evil, getting people to understand that contradiction, that belief system they're in, and it makes sense to me.
That's beautiful. I still remember our first chat really well in my mind, like when we
Yeah,
met up. I was actually going to pick up my sister at the airport, and I stopped at
yeah,
this gas station. I was sitting there talking to you about. I had this whole idea about starting the One Great Work Warriors, and for some reason, that conversation really sticks out in my head. I really felt good about meeting you, and here it is. Like we've been doing it for over a year now, and our group's still meeting, going strong. And I think it just
yeah,
goes to show that you know the interconnectedness and reforming families and connections and creating like stronger bonds between people who are working towards similar what is most important type goals is what we can do in this world without getting into a bunch of trouble with the police or the authorities currently. And maybe we get enough people to start thinking more consciously to where at the right timing we got enough people with the right mind to where it doesn't have to be quite such a terrible fallout that we're all kind of starting to see happening. So yeah, I mean that could turn into a whole nother discussion, but I guess we're kind of getting close to closing this conversation up. So I'll just give the mic back to you and just kind of whatever conclusions you want to draw or things you want to leave the audience with, kind of closing thoughts.
um not too much more to add, just yeah, just as always, thank you, for having me and including me into the group, like and inspiring me and just the fact that just keep putting this work out and putting it out in our way, right? That we need more of us to put the information out because like we can't just like lean on a few people to do it. And yeah, just like you're saying, like, and I always love this guy John Trudell, who passed away a few years ago, and I'd encourage anyone to go on YouTube or whatever and look up John Trudell, and he's got the same message over and over, and it's very similar to what we're always talking about. So if anything, yeah, I'd like to conclude with that. Go check out John Trudell, and he's always talking about thinking instead of believing. He's talking about the technological mindset, or our minds are being mined, the mining process of our minds. He puts it out in a different way, and he was someone who was very um, under surveillance of the government, and his young family was killed in a house fire, and in the I think the 79, and but he kept putting the message out, and he learned I think protesting wasn't the answer, right? Like, or asking for forgiveness or permission from the government and stuff like that. He started working on the consciousness and the mindset. So he's got a lot of, just another good place for people to check out, because I love him. John
Fantastic.
Trudell. Yeah.
Thanks for that. I need to check out his work as well. I've written him down several times in our conversations and still haven't checked out his stuff.
Yeah.
So John Trudell, check out John Trudell, folks. And then I also want you to check out Jim's work on Instagram and Truth in Your Heart on YouTube, and follow us, the One Great Work Warriors. We're going to be having another show for you every month if things keep going as we plan. So thanks, Jim, for being part of the Warriors and always showing up with great ideas and thoughts, and keep up the good work, brother. Thank you.
You too, man. Thank you.
All right.
I'm in a cage, I'm in a prison, I'm in a mental prison, and a physical one at that, and definitely a spiritual one, whether that's recognized at a conscious level or not.
As I wait for my sleep, the situation's got me thinking deep. Will the earth the same? And all life is in extinction. Evil creeps in your dreams. Secret teams throwing memes in the filling in the in-betweens. My control for the teens. Now they got you on your knees. I'm making my way through this open maze, but I'm dazed by mass confusion. All the images that they're using.
There's the race to the tip of the top of the pyramid. The pyramid.
Falling in, to this low level of spiritual awareness, such that these methods can have any effect over us.